Castillón Confidencial, by Albert Castillón. Welcome, how are you, insiders? Happy summer, thank you for being there even during vacation season to understand through this program what governments and the mainstream media don't tell us. We're going to talk about the United States, Spain, and Morocco. Yes, once again, because there are new developments. In addition, I'm being told directly, by military officers from the Rota and Morón bases.
I'll tell you about it in a minute.
Look, the United States' main partner for the strait, as you know, is not Spain, thanks to Sanchez, it's Morocco. And they are setting up strategic locations to protect the Mediterranean. For example, just 300 kilometers from the Canary Islands. Washington has set up a drone center to train American soldiers in the use of drones as weapons of war. It is the main training center in the entire African continent. It must be operational before 2030. And it is located in the city of Tan. That is the location, a city of 75,000 inhabitants, a strategic place facing the Atlantic. But it's not the only one. There is another strategic city where the United States has set up a military outpost and continues to expand it. It is an old city from the Spanish Protectorate, Alcázar Seguir. Today, it is a port in Morocco, located between Tangier and Ceuta. Therefore, the Strait of Gibraltar is very close to it. An important city is located there, as well as a naval base of the Moroccan Navy, and the United States is also expanding its resources there. Look at what is happening with the Rota and Morón bases. Well, Donald Trump already ordered that they start reducing, that the personnel start leaving to staff future bases in Morocco. We mentioned it here a couple of months ago. One would be in Saidia on the Mediterranean and the other in Agadir facing the Atlantic. But Donald Trump has come across something he didn't expect. The United States military, especially the high-ranking officers, don't want to swap Andalusia, Spain, for Morocco. They don't want to leave Morón or Rota, where their families and their friends have established a way of life. Do you know? Do you know what life is like in Andalusia? They have blended perfectly with the Andalusian population and with the rest of the Spanish people. They have built strong bonds and are happy in those areas, in those military bases. And they don't want to relocate to Morocco, a country that is hostile to them today, even if those are higher orders. Therefore, the United States government is facing something it didn't expect, that its military personnel don't want to swap Spain for Morocco, which is understandable, by the way. And the United States is rushing them. They are not going to completely shut down Morón and Rota, but they are going to scale back the resources and move them to Morocco. And why the rush? Gentlemen, the Strait of Hormuz is still not open. The mines they've placed in that strait sometimes make it unnavigable for large ships. What would be the alternative? What is already the alternative for many oil and gas tankers? The Strait of Gibraltar. For months now, the port of Algeciras has been reporting a very significant increase in ships in the area. And be careful, not all of them are operating legally. Many of them are extremely dangerous. They are what they call ghost ships. They don't have the mandatory insurance and they don't maintain the required safety measures. Most of them, as I said, transport gas and oil and are of Russian origin. Those ghost ships are now constantly crossing the Strait of Gibraltar. It's a longer trip, yes, but it's safer. No mines, No unnecessary stops. It's also a risk for the Spanish Mediterranean coast. Another prestige disaster could happen at any moment. That's why it's very important for the United States to control the Strait of Gibraltar, which is already in Anglo-Saxon hands, not in Spanish hands. On one side, Gibraltar, given away by Sánchez through the European Union to the United Kingdom. On the other hand, the United States bases on Moroccan soil. And now the disappearance, at least militarily, of Ceuta and Melilla as strategic locations for the defense of that strait. Deep down, the invasion is also a geopolitical plan to control the strait at a key moment, at a time when the United States needs it more than ever. It's curious that with so many strategists, so many intelligence services, and so much geopolitics, in the end, it's the military commanders at the Rota and Morón bases who are putting obstacles in the way. They don't want to go to Morocco. They want to stay in Spain.
Welcome. There's more.
We investigate.
The Mi Seguros app has sponsored the editorial Oque Castellón Confidencial. Download Mi Seguros, the easiest and fastest way to manage all your insurance in one place.
When riding an electric scooter, you don't want to carry papers. Keep your insurance digital, organized and ready when needed.
Castellón Confidencial.
By Albert Castillo. Gentlemen, for the past 4 years, we've been telling you, with the help of Pablo Cambronero, how we divert billions of euros to absurd things. Most of it through AECID, the cooperation agency. But which country has benefited the most from those money transfers? Well, since Pegasus was uncovered, since the phones of several ministers and President Sánchez were infected, from that point on, the country that benefited the most was Morocco. We are not talking about hundreds or thousands, but millions of euros. They say they're loans, but they've never proven that they pay them back afterwards. We're heading to Pablo Cambronero, who has all the information. How are you, my friend? How's it going? Very well.
Hello, Albert. As I always say, I'm glad to be here with you. Let's get people riled up, especially with everything happening. Let's talk about Morocco. There's much to discuss.
Is it true? Is it the country that benefits the most from those alleged aid payments?
There is some competition in that sense, but yes, Morocco is one of the countries that benefits the most, if not the one that benefits the most. With, for example, the credits from the Fund for the Internationalization of Enterprise, linked to cooperation, and also the monetary grants, with nothing required in return that they give you. Let's go in huge amounts through AECIDE, the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation, from Álvarez. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest. It's very close, for example, to Colombia, which gets a flood of donations. But yes, Morocco wins. Morocco is the #1 recipient of Spanish international cooperation funds.
How much are we talking about? What amount have you seen with your own eyes?
Well, look, in a very rough estimate, and not counting the non-repayable monetary grants, we're talking about more than 1,010 million euros. 1,010 million euros in 2024 and 2025, 2 years.
Just in 2 years, 1,010 million. Correct.
And there's more, because with subsidies of 200, 300, 500, the amount keeps increasing until it reaches figures close to 1,100 million euros in 2 years.
My God, what are we spending that money on? And I remember you published in April that we had bought a batch of Apache helicopters, right, for Morocco.
It wasn't exactly like that. We gave our international cooperation money, for example, so that Morocco could buy 50 locomotives, 755 million euros. We gave this to Morocco. Then 340 million euros for a desalination plant in Casablanca. And be careful because that desalination plant is special since it's also one of the main attractions that Morocco presents to FIFA to host the World Cup final. Spain is paying for that desalination plant. Interesting. They're not only going to take the World Cup final from us, but we're paying for their infrastructure so they can do it. Well, these 1 billion euros I've mentioned so far were delivered in 2 years. State-to-state credit that no one pays back. And meanwhile, in April, as you said very well, Morocco had bought an undetermined number of Apache combat helicopters. Helicopters that, for example, are quite a bit superior to the Tiger helicopters that Spain has. And on top of that, they buy them from the United States. Therefore, we can already see that the United States-Morocco alliance is there, and we are starting to suffer the first consequences of the international isolation that Sanchez is subjecting us to.
But if it's a rich country, if they're building the biggest stadium in the world in Casablanca, if Mohammed VI is the wealthiest person in Africa, why do we help them so much?
Very good question. Why are we so interested? Well, look, it's obvious that Morocco is confronting us, and it's not just me saying that, we see it every day. It wants to strip us of the territories that we rightfully and historically possess in Ceuta, Melilla, and the Canary Islands. And they've spent half their lives making these attempts and carrying out these small attacks. Or unlawful appropriations that they have also made, for example, by conducting oil prospecting near Spanish waters. So, does all this conflict just get hidden? As a result of a meeting that took place between Sanchez and Mohammed VI, where we even saw that the Spanish flag was upside down, in a clear allusion to the submission that Sanchez, not Spain, is showing towards Morocco. Here we have a paradigm shift. In the relationship between Morocco and Spain, there has always been international development cooperation. But since the Pegasus incident, things have been very striking. It's almost a humiliation. And we keep seeing it every day. They just invaded us and we just thank them. I mean, the level is high.
Yes, the level is high and concerning. Here, the risk is that all this money ends up in businesses connected to the government. Countless high-ranking government officials, ministers, former presidents like Felipe González, former defense ministers like José Bono, they all have interests in Morocco, businesses, companies, and always from the PSOE, not from any other party. Is it possible to connect the dots to see if some of that money, or all of it, or a percentage, ends up in the pocket of any of them?
Notice that the money trails, the traceability of the money that we have mapped out and followed, in those two projects we've mentioned, the 755 million euros for trains and the 340 million for the desalination plant, two familiar companies appear, as we've discussed them here before. We're talking about Acciona, yes, for the desalination plant, and we're talking about CAF, linked to the PNB, very closely linked to the PNB, in the railway sector, 755 million euros. Therefore, that line, we've already drawn that line. It's no longer a dotted line, it's a solid line. Now we have to see how that money has been distributed. The problem we have is that we're dealing with the absolute lack of transparency from the recipient. That means, as always with foreign aid, the recipient provides no information about the money, only about the project itself. Will it be built or not? Will it be done better or worse? But the amount of money always goes and is fixed. And then it's distributed in an absolutely opaque way that nobody controls. That's the heart of the matter. Therefore, it's not hard to infer that those who promote and create these projects are taking something for themselves.
Reports from the UCO and UDEF show that Acciona is the main construction company that allegedly financed the PSOE, awarding it public works and diverting a percentage to the party's pockets. If you tell me that Acciona is also one of the main companies receiving contracts in Morocco, well, I can imagine, right? Is anyone investigating this? Or is it because it's in Morocco? It can't be done.
As far as I know, up until now, it's just you and me investigating this. I really think we are the only ones interested in the traceability of the money. Well, there are some people. For example, at the outlet I write for, Diario de Diosetit, there is, in addition to the investigations I do, they're trying to pull more on the money trail and even pursue some of these funding lines through the courts to see what the real traceability is and who gets the money. Because in the end, this is a web of interest. You mentioned Acciona there. For example, Acciona and the Court of Auditors have ties. The money that was sent to the Philippines, Acciona, appears with a lot of opacity regarding all that money, which was millions of euros in solar projects. And of course, in the end, we see that the companies receiving that money keep coming up. They are huge companies because Acciona is a giant company. Then CAF is also a big company. It surpassed Talgo in the railway sector long ago. And we're seeing that they have their political connections, those political connections. In the end, unfortunately, and as we're seeing even at our borders, it all ends up as financial ties between people with political responsibilities and those companies. We need to draw that line, which is what we lack, in order to take all these matters to court. But of course, it's very difficult because Morocco, if it gets money, keeps quiet and uses that money to buy its Apache helicopters, its defense equipment, to reach a certain point and do things like what it's doing now.
You said it, Pablo. They took the World Cup final away from us when Morocco wasn't even bidding for it. Sánchez and Rubiales invited them. And also, I'm afraid we are paying for the infrastructure. It's unbelievable. The worst part is that this hasn't stopped. There's been no change in attitude after the attempted invasion of Ceuta. The so-called collaboration continues, right?
It continues. And remember, this isn't the first time. It's getting more serious each time, involving more people. But it has happened before in the past that Morocco has mobilized a huge number of young people. In the end, these are young people who cross over, lured by empty promises, and in the end, when this has happened before, what has immediately followed have been big projects. We must remember, for example, that the crisis that happened in 2021 or 2022 ended in a 755 million contract for 50 locomotives. We should also remember that Calviño was very proud of having installed a tram in Rabat a few weeks ago. So it's clear that Morocco benefits from all these dynamics, from all these attacks, when it should be exactly the opposite. We should suspend all economic activity with Morocco and impose a hellish tariff to say, gentlemen, you're not going to get away with all these invasions for free. But there's something, as you well know, and you know better than I do, that we don't know what happened on those cell phones that seem to hold many secrets.
I think it will end up being the most expensive blackmail the Spanish government has ever paid. But someday we'll find out, Pablo. Even if you and I are older, we'll find out and we'll tell it here. Hey, send my regards to your parents since you are at their house, and have a great summer, my friend. We'll keep in touch.
Well, right back at you, because they care about you and follow you. So, we are still in summer. We don't stop because they don't stop either. And there, I give you a huge hug.
Hugs, buddy.
See you soon. Hello, Castillón Confidencial. See you later.
Castillón Confidencial, de Albert Castillón.
Friends, in a minute, Heroes of Spain with Paco Álvarez, and there's more. Friends, our hero today was born in a beautiful village in Soria called Calatañazor, and it has just over 45 or 46 inhabitants, with a castle on top of the mountain, stone streets, and a lot of history. But he was born quite a few years ago, in 1540. Paco Álvarez, how are you doing, my friend?
How's it going? Well, here I am, delighted to be with you again, with our audience, talking about our heroes, many of whom are not very well known, like our friend today, Martín de Padilla y Manrique de Lara.
Don Martín de Padilla. Hey, there was a saying in Calatañazor, right?
Yes. They say it was in Calatañazor that Almanzor lost his drum.
And why is that?
They say it because there, near that beautiful village in Soria, Almanzor finally lost a battle against the Christians, and let's say his reputation as a warrior never recovered after that. Look, Almanzor made it all the way to Santiago de Compostela to steal the cathedral's bells. I mean, he was the terror of Castile back then.
Yeah, but he couldn't handle Calatañazor. Let them sit with that message. Hey, who was this secret hero, Don Martín de Padilla y Manrique de Lara?
Well, look, he is one of the last invaders that England has had, okay? That's it. He was one of the last people who invaded England. Exactly. The flakes.
We're cool here, aren't we?
We're really cool as hell. But anyway, besides that, we can say he was the Count of Santa Gadea and Buendía, Adelantado of Castile, and Captain General of the Armada of the Ocean Sea. I mean, Martín de Padilla is one of the many sailors of Philip II who are extremely important, fundamental, and some of them we know, like Álvaro de Bazán and so on. But others, like Martín de Padilla, have flown more under the radar.
Right. How have we not heard of someone so great who tried to invade England? Seriously.
Look at that. Yeah, his life is like a movie. Look at that. Charles I named him a Knight of the Order of Calatrava, which I also have the honor of belonging to as a child. I don't know why. He was from a noble family from this beautiful town of Calatañazor. And well, then at the age of 18, he began to pursue a military career. So we see him fighting against the French. Afterwards, we see him in the Alpujarras rebellion, suppressing it. And then he decides to join the Navy. And in the Navy, well, nothing less than one of his first assignments was at the Battle of Lepanto, in the greatest event the centuries have ever seen. 1571. Just imagine, there he was already under the command of Don John of Austria. And thanks to him and others in that battle, Europe was freed from the Turks, just as I say it.
Absolutely. He was a victor over the Turks, a victor over the English. People always talk about the English victories over the Spanish, rarely the other way around, right?
That's right. Look at that. After the Battle of Lepanto, he moved to a different sea. He left the Mediterranean and he was appointed first for the defense of Lisbon. When Drake and the English tried to organize what they called the Counter Armada, which ended in a great defeat, there our Martín de Padilla defeated the very famous Drake. We've all heard of Sir Francis Drake, but we haven't heard of Martín de Padilla. He sank 4 of his ships and forced him to flee when the pirate tried to attack. When the pirate Drake tried to attack Lisbon. And that's just for starters, but anyway.
But this man was a genius. His great fame in those years became known across all the seas. He was a good sailor. He was a good strategist. What was he like?
He was a great sailor. It's like, even though he was from an inland town, it was as if he had been born in the water. I want to say, he handled strategy perfectly. His men loved him. He had a very special way of commanding and organizing everything. Because look, then in 1591, he defeated an Anglo-Dutch squadron near Almeria. And in 1596, King Philip II appointed him, finally, that's what we've said, Captain General of the Armada of the Ocean Sea, which is equivalent to commanding all the Spanish ships in the Atlantic. That's huge. And well, in 1597, continuing this war, because of course, it's just like you said, people always talk about or give a lot of importance to the Spanish Armada, which is just one battle in a war. And we won the war, and we won it thanks to people like Martín Padilla, as we will see now. But let's move on. In 1597, the spies of Philip II found out that the English fleet had gone to the Azores to try to intercept the Spanish fleet from the Indies, the one that was bringing the treasures. So they ordered Martín de Padilla to organize a fleet to invade England. Meanwhile, since the English fleet wasn't there to defend it, and that's what happened. On October 17, 1597, he arrived with the Spanish fleet at the English Channel. He crossed it, and in the east of England, near the town of Falmouth, 400 Spanish infantry soldiers originally landed, who were supposed to wait there for the main army to arrive and advance together to London. And there, the Spaniards, the 400 Spaniards, stayed for 4 or 5 days, waiting to see what would happen. The English didn't dare attack them, because we had a certain reputation. And unfortunately, the fleet was scattered, and no more reinforcements arrived. So they said, well, then we'll just go back to Spain. They re-embarked without any problem. And they returned to Spain without any problem.
It's only by a miracle that people in London don't speak Spanish.
No, just by chance.
Hey, what a character, really. Martín de Padilla y Manrique de Lara. I imagine that maybe the English remember them. Sometimes that happens more with the English than with Spaniards, right?
I think they remember his family more in this case. Because it's always. Then, after this, that's 1597, 1602, we find him fighting again in the Mediterranean between Italy and Spain. He started out with 4 little boats and ended up facing 9 Scottish, French, pirate, French and Berber ships. He captured or sank all of them. So, with 4 ships, he fought and defeated 9. That's how it was. In 1602. And then in 1602, by the way, that's when Martín Padilla went to join the heroes in heaven, shortly after this battle. So he practically died fighting. And 2 years later is when they received, so to speak, the loot from what had been obtained. In 1604, the treaty was signed, the Treaty of London, that put an end to the war between Spain and England. And, well, we won that war in the treaty. All our requests were accepted, except the only one we gave up was that we would not try to establish Catholicism in England anymore. That was our only concession. But anyway, for example, that English fleet that had gone to try to intercept the treasure fleet was also sunk and captured, and they fled. In fact, Admiral Essex was beheaded by Elizabeth I in the Tower of London. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, that whole story they've told us, that England always defeats us at sea and so on, is a blatant lie. And Martín de Padilla is one of the heroes who can attest that it was never like that. Never.
Any monument in Spain?
Not that I know of. Not a single ship, not even a tribute.
And no Spanish Navy ship bears his name today. Please, please, please. Well, not even one from Trans-Mediterranean, if you ask me. Instead of naming it Ciudad de Palma, right? They should name it Martín de Padilla. I don't know.
Well, I think his monument is that he won the war against England. When he withdrew from Falmouth in 1597, England, Elizabeth I England, never dared to attack any Spanish interest at sea again. Never again. They feared us more than anything.
The English never talk about the fleet of pirates with which they ravaged the entire Mediterranean. They never talk about that dark past, do they?
No, for the English, everything, even that, yes, when your hero is a pirate, things start to go wrong. One day, maybe in a few years, we do this episode about anti-heroes, and then we can talk about scoundrels like Francis Drake, whom we defeated here, whom we defeated in Veracruz, in Lisbon, everywhere. But it turns out he went down in history as if he were a hero and had done something, right? But anyway, incredible. On the other hand, we don't talk about Martín de Padilla, who is a real hero and who always defeated everyone he faced, just like Álvaro de Bazán in the glorious times of Philip II.
Martín de Padilla y Manrique de Lara. For him to be talked about in the 21st century, he surely didn't expect that, but here we are doing it. And especially on your channel, Castellón Confidencial. Hacks, Paco.
Hacks, friends. See you later.
Well, friends, get some rest. It's the weekend. We'll be here on Monday in the trenches. I'll be waiting for all of you. If anything happens, we'll show up at any moment. Kisses.
Tú lo sabes y yo lo sé. Somos confidenciales. Tú eres confidencial. Yo soy confidencial. Todos confidenciales. Todos confidenciales. Pero solo para mentes abiertas y para gente despierta. Desde la trinchera las balas silban y no hay manera de salir allá afuera. Aquí la libertad tiene las alas de cera. Albert Castillo, Susana Gash, Tucci Castillo y demás. Muchas gracias. Con esto y un bizcocho. Hasta mañana a las 8.
Castillón Confidencial, de Albert Castillón.